Here we go. Okay, so the recording has started. So let's just slow down and set some intention, and then we'll jump in and see where we go today. So I'll just invite you all to just close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths. We're in our final session of the program today, our 6th session in the last 12 weeks. And our focus today is the ether element, the ascension stage. In this stage, we're healing our duality consciousness and moving toward a unity consciousness. So I just invite you to just take note of how far you've come in the last 12 weeks. Take note of what your intention was in the beginning of this program, what you were asking for, what you were hoping to achieve or experience, and look at where you're at now in your life. When we started this program, I was in Nova Scotia, Canada. Now I'm in Nosara, Costa Rica. Some of you were living in different places. Some of you were living in different circumstances. Some of you have traveled to different places in that time. Some of you have started new jobs or left old jobs or created new. Thanks for your patience, everyone. I'm back. Um, let's just continue in that meditation. It's funny how I said that it should be no problem, and I haven't had any issues, but then the internet flickered. So let's try that again. Let's start over. Again, just close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, let go of anything you're bringing into the conversation today. And again, just be aware of how far you've come in the last 12 weeks. Maybe how much more patient you've become. Maybe how much more you've been able to learn to go with the flow, to let go, to allow. Maybe be aware of the intentions you set in the beginning of the program and where you might be now, how your life has shifted or changed in that time. Just get connected to your breath in this present moment. And in a moment, I'm going to ask that question, and I'd like you to sit with the answer until it becomes crystal clear. When the answer becomes crystal clear, you can open your eyes and write it in the chat window. Considering this is our last session of the program, what would make this an extraordinary experience for you? What would make it a miracle today in our conversation? I encourage you to dream bigger than you've ever dreamed, maybe in your whole life, or at least in this program. And let me know, if you could experience a miracle by the end of our conversation today, what would that miracle look like for you? So Una said, recognize my true nature, be love, joy, peace. Tony said, consciously aware of every single trigger, to pause when I'm triggered and respond with humility and an openness to the other person's worldview and belief system. Sophie said, how to fully love myself and others. Luke said, attain full health to live authentically and be an inspiration for others to get on a healing journey as well. Nice. Thanks, Luke. Anthony said, to connect with unceasing courage that allows divine omnipotence and omniscience to flow through this vessel. Thanks, Anthony. Andy, my question to you is, what would you have if you had that? And just ponder that for a moment. And maybe I'm going to invite you to get a little more focused on that. Like, what specifically would you have that you don't have now if you had that unceasing courage? What would be different about your life? And Luke, my challenge to you is to get clear what is missing in your life for you to attain full health now. What's missing? What would be different? How do you know that you're not already there? Just kind of ponder that question in the meantime as well. So we're waiting for Joachim's intention, but I'm going to open up the floor to connect. And Thomas said, to speak more and more my truth, to be fully aware of what my intuition tells me to do or say, and trust the process. Thanks, Thomas. So I'm going to open up the floor and yeah, thanks, Luke. To feel peace of mind, vitality, and joy for life, free from anxiety and depression. Thanks, Luke. Who would like to play first today? Who would like to go a little deeper into their intention? See where we can go. Show me, raise the hands. Thomas, great. Okay, you can unmute yourself, Thomas. Oh, wow, there's your light.
Enlightenment.
Yeah, yeah. Instant enlightenment.
Instant enlightenment, yeah.
Yeah. So you said speak more and more my truth and be fully aware of what my intuition tells me to do or say and trust the process.
Yeah, as we had my coaching session last week, and I don't know if you watched the video, but of course, if you watched it, you might not understand. But for the others, just my kind of homework was to speak 5 minutes live on a Facebook video about the things I'm most afraid of being judged for. To speak honestly about this, and I started. And my intention was, and this was very important for me, to do it like I play an instrumental solo, because this is very easy for me to do this. But with words, in the past I created more like a fog to hide behind. And my homework was kind of using my words to show myself more and more. And I did this, and in the end it was a 10 minutes video. And I really would say I did it good, because during this 10 minutes process, I relaxed more and more. I felt more grounded. I felt really powerful. And also the next day I was feeling very light, but grounded and full of energy. It was a wonderful thing. And also the feedback was very, very wonderful. And I just want to continue on this, because this was a clear, let's say, a clear homework. And every time I did it in between, also with friends, when I was listening what I should say at the moment, I felt it in my whole body. It is like a feeling called shivers. When I was sometimes, for example, yesterday I met my men's group. We meet once a month, and I didn't want to talk about this whole COVID stuff. I wanted to skip it, and then we had this discussion, and I really said what's on my mind about this. And in the moment, I felt I did what I need to. I said what I need to say, and it was my truth. It was not in any way emotional charged, but it was very powerful. Um, and what I mean when I say I want to trust this process more and more, that the difficult part is this was so powerful, this was so intense, that afterwards I was looking for more of this. I don't know. And I think part of this story is do it when it's necessary and do it when it's time. And on the other hand, accept when it's time to be silent. And this is the most heavy part for me at the moment, to be honest. To trust that in the moment when it's happening, um, I will feel it again. I will get the soft kick in my butt or whatever it is then that I know it is to, I have to stand up or say something or do something, and not not try to make myself smaller in kind of, oh no, sorry, yeah, you're right, maybe. No, stand there when I say it and stand also there when I don't say anything. And this is, as I said, this is the harder part, to trust that it will come again, because it was so powerful and so uh, cleaning or cleansing also to me. Yeah, this is the main thing. I want to trust this process more and more, and I liked this step, the last step I did in this direction, and I want just to, yeah, as you always say, like practicing, and then the my trust will come, but not trying to push myself when it's silent, which is the hardest part. So
Are you asking for an assignment to challenge you to trust yourself again?
maybe this is a possibility.
Is there something that makes you feel like you don't trust the process?
Hmm. Well, I think that it's more this, when I do things of my organizing life, let's say, as I have this computer job, this office job, like part-time, when I'm sitting too much in front of the computer or doing something that is not really connected also to my body in a healthy way, like when I move or whatever, I lose a bit this center. And then, or let's say when my mind takes over control too much, then I lose this trust. It's getting faster and faster and faster, and I'm getting grumpy and more grumpy, and it's difficult for me and for my wife. And then I stopped trusting this process, of course, more than before. So when it's too loud outside, it's more difficult for me. Or also I got some criticizing this week because of I shared things or told things I was what that were important, or thoughts that were important for me. When I get criticized, it's still a bit of a challenge to stay focused and centered, as I was a very well trained people pleasing person. So
So it sounds like what you're saying is when it's noisy around you or when it's busy around you, you find it more difficult to listen and to trust. And when you're feeling criticized or triggered, it's more difficult to trust.
yeah, and also now, as you repeated it, when there is more people around me, as the main thing was, then with one person it's easy, with two person it's a bit more difficult, and if it's more, I tried to fit in everyone's expectation. And I mean, I'm much better in this already than 10 years ago, but I remember there were moments when I felt like stuck because I wanted to do 10 things at the same time, or wanted to be 10 nice guys for 10 people. So I think it's when more people are around that look at me, and I have the feeling they expect something or whatever, it's getting more difficult. So I think this is also a part. When there is more people around, more listeners, more opinions also, and it's connects to this, it's getting more noisy. Yeah.
What is your intuition and truth telling you right now?
Nothing clear or nothing special. It's more about doing nothing at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So in those times when it's time to be silent, or you're being criticized, or there are more people around, is that a time to be silent and to allow?
Looks like it's a good start, at least.
Sometimes it's more difficult to get connected to our intuition when there's outside influences,
Hmm.
or when there's more noise, or when there's more things happening. Was there a time recently where you felt like you weren't connected to your intuition when there are other people around?
If there was a time when this,
Yeah, did that happen recently?
Not really, I would say. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a bit more difficult. It was like I had a company online meeting there. It was a bit more difficult because there was a new colleague, and she's new in the company. And also, to be honest, is a very attractive woman. And I'm not into dating or looking to someone, totally not. I love my wife, but this woman was looking at us like, I wanted to run away, not in a real way, but it was a little challenging more. I started to sweat and was very scared to do something wrong. So this is not, and also to talk about this makes me feeling a bit, let's say, vulnerable and weak, I would say. This is something, it was a special situation for me where kind of more expectation against or towards me, I would say.
How did you handle the situation?
I think the main thing was really I was speaking when there was something to say, and didn't try to, as I used in my past. I was this funny guy that always wanted to make a joke about everything, get the kind of controlling the situation by a stupid joke or risking something, but the setting didn't allow this anyway. So I was more listening and talking when it was necessary. And this, of course, helped.
Is that the process that you felt like you were being guided to practice?
You mean listening when it's,
Mhm.
at least it's something I started 1 or 2 months ago, or maybe 1 month ago, really to start and listen. In case I don't know what to add, say nothing. And this is a big change in my behavior, I would say. Some people recognized it already and said, are you fine? Is everything okay with you because you're not talking anything? But yeah, it's easier. It's easier and makes it more clear. And of course, it triggers a bit my fears that I'm still welcome, as I was so trained as this funny person in the round, and I have to offer this, that I'm accepted in a group of people. So this triggers a bit the insecurity also. But it looks like it's a way to do, and I mean, I'm 44. I guess I did this other stuff more than 35 years. So 1 month against 35 years is a small difference, maybe.
And what makes you think you need to trust your process?
You mean why I think I'm not trusting?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not, maybe the question was not fully, yeah, no, it's, you asked me, it's more really trusting the gap between like where I have to say or have to do something. It's more trusting the pauses. It's funny because I was one of my coaching clients. I told her she's a musician and she's very good in practicing and training. And I told her the same story what I would tell myself now, maybe. Um, that I practiced most of my life. I practiced the notes, and now it's time to practice the pauses. And it's also important in the music. Otherwise, you have an endless melody without any breath in between. So
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're trying to do is get me to help you to trust the space because you're in the space right now and you don't know what to do.
yeah, let's say not only now. It's kind of a thing where I get maybe sometimes frustrated or nervous that I'm missing out on something very important. I mean, especially like trainings with groups like this, where we have exercises, where we do things. Also, yeah, this other watching other people doing something, other people doing a lot or much more than me. I know what I mean. Then trusting my pause is, yeah, this is where I want to be more, uh, let's see, more happy about this. It's not getting nervous because of this stillness in between.
Yeah. So is there anything that makes you feel like you still need to trust the process that you're not already doing it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, also I told you, but from tomorrow on I will be 3 days fasting and being alone in the woods for 3 days. There's no one I can talk to, so I think it's a good part to continue this and see what's happening then.
Yeah. So I guess you're already there.
Yeah, part of me maybe is already there.
Yeah. What do you think you need to do to move forward from here?
The first thing that came to my mind was embracing this moment as fully as I did the one when I was speaking in this video. Not less and not more, but the same with the same intensity. This is very easy. On the other hand, it's very easy. So
How can you practice trusting this process in the next 24 hours before you go away for the weekend or for the 3 days?
it's just not pushing myself somewhere else, not being somewhere where I am, not doing something I don't need to do, and not doubting that or not thinking I'm doing too much, too less, not the right thing, whatever. Just being here, embracing this moment, moving on the next steps, and don't worry what's happening next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like trusting the process. My intuition is telling me that you're there right now and that you just need to trust the process
Yeah, looks like this.
and wait for an opportunity to practice again when it shows up.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is what I feel. These moments will come more often, and it's good to be also to have rested before, to have the energy and the power to do it then when it's needed. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. And I see your intention, Joachim, to the ability to reach out and sense for people that could be the right companions on your way, work, family, music. And one specific wish at the moment is to find a trustworthy person as cleaning staff for the new office. So let's hold that intention for you as well. So who would like to play next? Sophie. Okay. Sophie, your intention was to fully love yourself and others. So make that real for me. Where's that showing up in your life right now?
So currently I'm struggling a little bit with setting boundaries, and I recognize that actually like my circle of or my boundaries are quite close to myself. So actually when I feel more connected to myself, I feel I can respect those boundaries, and then I can connect to this self-love. And also the intention of the program was kind of to become this fully loving, joyful person and connected to my higher self. But recently I'm having a hard time of when I'm in those situations of self-loathing, to to love myself, to love others. Then usually I'm super grumpy with my partner or my parents. And then I feel like I'm constantly like yeah I'm doing one step forward, but then another step backward, and then again I feel like I'm in this low vibration. So I can raise the frequency, but then the autopilot is going back to the lower frequency, which is the not self-loving, and kind of feeling that I'm mm, limiting myself, and I'm not connecting to my full potential. So it's almost like I want to like a magic recipe to what I can tell myself in those situations, and I have some different toolkits, but it's almost like I always have to look for which tool fits in which situation. And yeah, I feel like there's like something holding me back always from the self-love, that I always feel I'm not enough, or that I don't deserve the love, and that translates then into the relationship to people I have more like closest to me, like my partner or my parents. So it's almost like that this self-loathe I project to them, and then I can be super pissy. So I don't want to be that way. And because it's the ether element, so also the superpower of the love, um, which is where I'm struggling with the most.
I heard you talk about autopilot and how the natural tendency is for you to sort of slip back in that lower frequency. I was in a shamanic ceremony on Sunday, and the theme for me was really aligning with my higher potential in my life right now, aligning with a new mindset, aligning with a new way of looking at my life. And the big message was changing my default, changing my autopilot mindset. Because imagine if you've been practicing a technique in martial arts a certain way for a really long time, and it becomes autopilot, but then you learn that there's a new way to do it that's not the same as you used to be doing it. And if you're in the middle of a fight, you're going to go back to what you know. You're going to go back to that hard ingrained habit. So it takes another 10,000 hours of practicing the habit the new way to become a master at it again. So what do you think is happening in that perspective when it comes to these things where you're slipping back into autopilot? What do you think is going on there for you?
Yeah, it's what you're saying. It's when I'm maybe not in an aware state that I slip back into old patterns because I've been doing the things in a certain way for 30 something years. So it's just the length of time that I've spent doing things in a certain way, and changing that mindset is requires a lot more energy. So it's also a way for the body or the mind to say, okay, this is easy. And the other part requires actually to make an effort and not to, because sometimes it's also like when you're in this mood, it's also maybe you don't want to get out of it. Maybe you're like comfortable of feeling bad and wanting to receive pity or attention from others because you feel bad. If everything is okay, then you don't need that. So it's almost like a mechanism of yeah, like self-protection or attention seeking.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's an opportunity to apply that ether element to a situation like this. So when you find yourself slipping back into the old pattern, what superpower can you apply in that moment that's going to allow you to start to move into a higher frequency?
Well, one thing is definitely the compassion to connect to the emotions I would like to feel.
Mhm. Yeah.
So when we did the session of the water element, that helped me to recognize that I have the potential of changing the emotions I would like to feel just
Yeah.
by visualizing them. Um, yeah, the awareness part of connecting to the wisdom to understand, okay, what's what's the new belief that I would like to live by. So depends.
Yeah. Yeah. It's thinking like, imagine when a person transitions from karate to kickboxing.
Mm,
There's a lot of compassion needed there because their stance and the way they fight and the way they spar is going to be very different until they get into that new routine. Some people say, like Thomas said earlier, like, what do? I need a tool so I can trust myself. And I said, and you just said it, the tool is compassion.
mm,
The tool is compassion, because some people think that they need more so that they can change the habits faster, or so that they can, oh, how do I get there quicker? Well, compassion is the answer. Because when we focus on where we're not, and we focus on, oh, I'm not there, I need more tools, I need more exercise, I need more practices, that's not compassion. That's thinking that we're not enough. I'm not enough. But when I say, oh, okay, I just need to be patient, well, then I'm enough in that moment. I might not be where I want to get to yet, but I can't be there any quicker than I am. So in this moment, I am enough. Even though I'm not there yet, I'm still getting triggered maybe, or I'm still feeling like self-loathing, or I'm slipping into a lower frequency, or I slip back into the autopilot. The tool is compassion, because by having compassion, I'm allowing my frequency is raising just through compassion, because compassion raises my frequency. So when someone says, well, when I slip into a triggered state, what do? Well, have compassion. Yeah, but how do I change the trigger? Well, have compassion. So if that doesn't change the trigger, have compassion, because the compassion takes me out of the trigger to a higher state, a higher frequency, and then from there, the trigger can change.
yeah.
Sometimes we need the lower frequency to apply the higher frequency emotion. That's how we get our 10,000 hours in. That's how we create the new programming, the new habits, by responding with compassion and patience.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the part that what you're saying, like the patience, that maybe in that moment you can't do anything actively. You can't accelerate it. You just have to relax in the process and, yeah, allow things to move at their pace. You can't take action. Well, you can, it's a sort of taking action, but it's different style than I'm used to.
Yeah. Passive action.
Hmm.
And unconditional love, which is really the ultimate goal in any spiritual practice, I think. Unconditional love is the ability to love ourselves in the moments that trigger us most unconditionally. Unconditional love is easy when we're happy with ourselves, or when we performed well, or when we did something we're proud of. It's easy to be unconditionally loving then. It's a little more challenging when we see the ugly sides of ourselves, and when we slip into self-loathing, or we get triggered, or we slip into old patterns, or we insult somebody, or we say something that we didn't mean to say. That's where the unconditional love is most challenging. That's when it's most valuable, I think. And unconditional love, of course, includes compassion, and includes patience, and includes wisdom and humility, and all of the emotions together.
Hmm.
What else?
Yeah. Yeah. It sometimes feels like this that you know what you want to do, but then it's like the fully embracing it and doing it, not just the theory, but the practice.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's the practice.
Yeah. High performers dream of this place they're going to get to where they perform at a high level all of the time. How many of us dream of that state? Oh, I'm going to perform at a high level all the time. Never going to make mistakes. Never going to need to be patient. Never going to need to be compassionate. Never going to need to correct myself. I'm just going to exist in this imaginary, maybe, or maybe not imaginary, but this fantasy of perfection. And I don't know if we get there. I think the perfection comes when we're able to apply compassion in the instant moment. So when I get triggered, I'm able to be immediately compassionate. Then I've reached the promised land. When I stub my toe, and I'm immediately able to laugh about it and say, damn, that hurts, but it's okay. Or when I get triggered because I was at the beach all day. Julie and I were at the beach all day last week, and I beach all day long, and she was cranky about something, and I got triggered at her, and then I was immediately like, great, now I got triggered. Now I have to feel bad about myself for getting triggered. But then I was just able to be like, no, man, I spent the whole day at the beach, and she got on my nerves, and she's a female, I'm a male. We have different psychology. We respond to things differently. And I just need to have compassion for her and myself in this moment. And just be like, look, I need space for you for a little bit, and I need space for myself. I need to just go and be in my cave for a little while. And like you said about boundaries, it's really, boundaries are self-love. Boundaries are probably the most important practice of self-love. And when we slip into that self-loathing state, I think for me, sometimes that state happens when I'm not practicing boundaries. When I've given too much of myself, or I get pissed off at myself, and then I project that into other people. Because while I'm in that fight or flight state, I forget that I am them and they are me. And I start living in that duality consciousness where they're separate from me. And then, my energy is focused on them instead of focused on myself. And I forget in that moment. It's like we don't develop the superpowers so we never have to use them. We develop them so we can use them whenever we need them. Otherwise, what would be the point of having the superpowers? So we develop compassion not so we never have to use it ever again. We develop it so that we can use it whenever we need it. Where's the opportunity for you to have more compassion for yourself, Sophie?
practicing the boundaries, saying no. Which is connected to the previous sessions, just the creating space and allowing to move at my own pace and not the pace that I think I should be moving at, internally, but also work related. So yeah, just taking on more projects or the stuff we talked about in the last session. So there's the opportunity. It's hard. And there's this huge resistance of just like, oh, my mind wants to continue doing the things the way I know how to do them. And then I know that there's this other force saying, okay, but why don't you try it in a different way? And also fear, but it's mainly like yeah, like this ambitious mindset of overachiever and people pleaser, wanting to yeah, just continue in this hamster wheel of doing and achieving and not allowing. So that's the opportunity of, yeah, setting boundaries, saying no, saying yes to me.
Yeah. Which I think is also saying yes to other people, even though it's no in the moment, it's yes in the long run. Julia wanted to come over last night to grab something, and I told her that she could only come and grab it, but I was working on the pilgrimage, working on the project, and I had a lot of work I wanted to do before bed. And when she came over, she stayed for a couple of minutes, and then she wanted to tell me something that she got triggered about earlier in the day. And I felt this heaviness in my stomach where I was like, yeah, okay, go ahead. But then I stopped myself because I listened. I was like, actually, I feel like you're kind of overstepping my boundaries right now. I think I need to focus on this project, and I don't think I'm in a place to really listen right now. I could tell it kind of pissed her off a little bit in the moment. It kind of triggered her in the moment. But by the time we spoke, like 2 hours later, it was fine. And so that people pleaser inside of me wanted to stop and be like, okay, fine. What is it? I've got 5 minutes, or okay, go ahead. Tell me what you're triggered about. My stuff can wait. My priorities aren't as important. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to try to fix this situation. As a fixer, as a man, I want to always fix. So yeah, sure. Tell me what you're triggered about. I'll try to fix it. But really, nothing needed to be fixed. She just needed to be heard, because that's really what women prioritize, what value most, is really just being heard, the space to be heard. But I wasn't in the space to receive what she had to say right then. So I wouldn't be serving her or myself by listening in that moment. And even though she still had some emotions come up around it when I said no, by the time I did listen to her, those emotions were gone, and so was the trigger. And then she was able to express it in a way that had no more emotional charge anymore. So it was against my habit to say no to her. My habit was actually to say yes, to stay, to listen, to put my priorities on the back burner, to make her priorities more important. So it was against the grain for me to say, no, not right now. But that's what was necessary for me to start creating this newer habit of really respecting my own boundaries. And in the end, it was better for her and it was better for me. So it's really about having compassion for myself in that moment and having compassion for her in that moment, by recognizing that if I did say yes to her, I would be people pleasing, and it wouldn't actually be out of love. It would be based in fear. Because when I allow other people to overstep my boundaries, it's never out of love. I might try to convince myself it's out of love, but it's really out of fear.
Yeah, it's kind of the fear of losing them or not meeting the expectations. Might be, yeah, people, partners, but also work relationships, so that you're not competent or like this imposter syndrome. But yeah, actually, I value people a lot who have clear boundaries and have a clear working ethic, or have clear working hours, because they're, you know, they know their facts straight, and they have a clear, they're just aligned with their nature. So gives
Yeah.
them more credibility. Mm.
So your intention was how to love yourself and others. What did you learn? How do you love yourself and others?
Connecting to the superpower of compassion, of especially being compassionate when I'm triggered, I'm in this ugly side of accepting, of being flexible in the moment, in the space, of not wanting to change things or accelerate them, but just accepting them how they are, and holding that space for myself. And yeah, the boundary setting, the that maybe also having compassion for others is, I can only have compassion for others if I have compassion for myself. I can only love others if I can love myself. So, and this, the self love starts with the compassion and the respect. Mm.
Yeah. What do you need for a homework assignment?
uh, well, to have very clear the no's in my life and the yeses. So because sometimes they get mixed up, and when I have to make a decision, I just go with whatever I want to do in that moment, but can't be really reliable to myself. So just have these two sides clear. So like the inside the circle, outside the circle, like the boundaries. And yeah, then acting on them. Um, I know I have some projects coming up, and probably I have to, or I will say no to some of them or most of them, and that will be the harder part. So creating the list and then acting respectfully.
Yeah. Where does the yes or no come from when you know that it's aligned? Where do you feel it in your body?
Well, I feel it in my gut. I feel it in my stomach, in my chest. Um, so my core,
Yeah.
the dantian hara.
Yeah. Sounds like there's an opportunity to look there for the answer.
Hmm.
You don't have to make the answer, do you?
No.
See, that's the thing. We think that when we listen to our intuition that we have to make the answer. Like, oh, I have to say yes, I have to say no. And then if I say no, I have to deal with the consequences. Or if I say yes, I have to deal with the consequences. But that's not the case. It's not coming from me. I'm receiving the answer and then I'm relaying it. So someone says, hey, do you want to go to this party with me on Friday? Let me check in. Hey, they said no. Sorry, can't come. It's not me saying no. It's just that's what they said no. It doesn't feel aligned for me. You know, there's a fine line between like, well, maybe I just feel vulnerable and that's why I don't want to go. And I have to listen to that too. Maybe I'm feeling insecure or maybe I'm feeling uncomfortable. And sometimes there's value in saying yes when my body says no. But there's a difference between feeling of vulnerability and a feeling of my intuition saying no. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is to really fully love yourself, you can just sort of accept that the answers aren't really coming from you, Sophie, the ego or the character, but rather they're coming from a higher place, and that you're really just receiving the message and then you're just relaying the message. So when the job comes and you check in and the answer is no, you're not saying no to the job. Your intuition said no to the job, and you're just passing on the message. So healthy boundaries are really about listening to the higher calling and acting accordingly.
Yeah, it's a nice way to put it.
Less pressure, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my challenge for you is to write that list and then listen, check in and listen. And then the decision's easy because it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. Would anyone else like to play? Yeah, Tony.
First of all, Ricky's those games we played, was that Thursday or Friday?
Friday, I think. Yeah.
I mean, that was they're good games. I don't know if anybody here has attended those, but yeah.
Lots of fun, huh?
Learn a lot about yourself, about other people. They're pretty cool if anybody wants to attend the next one. Full disclosure, I spoke to Anthony about this, who pointed out something. I'll just, if you can read my statement, it says consciously aware of every single trigger, to pause when I'm triggered and respond with humility and an openness to the other person's worldview and belief system. So I'm going to give you a few examples. I got a new one, Anthony. And it's like the universe is prepping me. It's been putting me to school here with a couple lessons over the past month or so. But what I wanted to say first, Ricky, before I get into the examples, was, okay, we know that our triggers are rooted in our subconscious, right? So if I could become consciously aware of every single trigger, that would mean I'd be an enlightened being. And I know I'm nowhere close to being an enlightened being, right? But still, you said, hey, miracle, right? So I put it in there. So before, again, I get into the examples, on the journey that most of us are on right now, at least the one I've been on for the last 20 or 30 years. And, mine started when I was 13, when, my mom basically said she would not take me away from my new stepfather's behaviors. I couldn't figure out, why would a mother treat her son like that? And why is this stepfather treating me like that? And I came to the conclusion that it's just being passed down from generation to generation to generation. It's social conditioning and programming and the associated childhood trauma, all that stuff, right? So once I became aware of that, then I finally figured, I'm like, wait a minute, we're not our identities. This is all an illusion. I could be an infinite amount of identities if I was raised by different parents, because we tend to adopt the emotions and behaviors of the people we live with growing up, or the people that are most influential in our life, right? So now it's almost like, in today's world, when I'm having a conversation with somebody and a topic comes up and you want to get into some type of, debate, and if you have two passionate people, the voices start to raise up a little bit. You can feel yourself getting a little heated, but it's almost like, it's not almost like, if a Democrat and a Republican, or liberal and conservative, or two people on opposing sides, if they start to have some type of debate, they kind of know where the other one's coming from. With the way I'm going to say we think here, where I know that I understand why you believe what you do. It's not your identity. It comes from social conditioning and programming, right? 95% of the people out there haven't even heard of that. So I can't even get in to a conversation or debate, because they think I'm cuckoo to begin with. They never heard of anything like this. Does that make sense, Ricky? So that makes it like twofold. One, you have an opposing worldview, an opposing belief system, but two, they don't understand my belief system at all. They have no, you tell them that you're not your identity, they think you're crazy. So I think that's the first step in wanting to be able to respond with humility and an openness to another person's worldview and belief system. Like, I think I've been on this journey for so long. You know, sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, I got it all figured out. You just got to listen to me. You just got to listen to me, right? But yeah, that's not going to work, right? So, you know, my goal is to, as I said, be consciously aware of every single trigger, be able to pause and then say, you know what, that your point of view, it could absolutely be true. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Have you ever thought of this? Instead of knowing in my mind, hey, you're wasting your time being so attached to your opinions and your belief system. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm attached to my belief system, even though, and it is a belief system, but in my belief system, I can fit everybody else's belief system in, and I respect all of them. But I feel whenever most other people have these belief systems where they can't, nobody else fits in it, right? Am I making any sense to you, Ricky? So I just wanted to throw that out first, right? That was my first point. But getting into my examples, I am going to be going into, and I'm working through it right now. I've been recently certified to teach this personal development program, and I want to teach that program or facilitate that program in prisons to veterans. These are going to be people of diverse ethnic backgrounds, right? African American, could be Asian, could be whatever, right? And so the universe, come to think it now, I'm going to give you 3 examples, has really been kind of prepping me. And this first example, I've never had anything like this happen to me, and I'm so thankful for this this lesson. So let me just throw it out to you. So I was and I got triggered. I was I was in a casino. I was on the boardwalk, and I had my whole family with me, including my son. We cut through a casino, and my son got to the big food court. My son's like, hey, I'm gonna get this ice cream, something macaroon, whatever it was. So I said, okay, let's go do this. So we were all, and it was super, super crowded, right? So somebody comes up to me, what do you want? I'm like, let me get this macaroon. They go back. It took them a while to find it. They came out, and they're like, let's motion for me to ring it up. And this African-American woman jumped in front of me and started talking to the person. And the person kind of was like trying to brush her off a little bit, but she kept at it. I didn't see her. She came out of nowhere. And I just said, excuse me, I just want to, I'm just going to ring this up, and, we're going to get out of here. And she started, what the hell are you talking about? I've been here for like 30 minutes. Somebody else was here. They're not waiting on me. And I said, well, and she started raising her. I said, it's not my fault. I just came up here. And then she threw out the white privilege, right? And I never had that happen to me before. I mean, and this is where I got triggered. I've been working with the big brothers, big sisters for 15 to 20 years. I was a counselor at a juvenile detention center. I've mentored plenty of African-American kids. Currently sit on the board for my county for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I head up our recruiting committee. But instead of pausing and thinking, this has been her belief system, this is her experience, this is the way she looks at the world, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And my wife was right there, and my wife said, let's just get out of here. And then that's when I did take a pause and leave, right? But if I'm going into a prison, I don't have any room for error. There's no room for, no matter how I can get triggered, right? There's no room for me to be, to allow any type of emotion to come up. And I think that was a test that the universe, just my first test that the universe gave to me to say, hey man, you're getting ready to go do this. I gotta put you through the ringer here. So, you know, and I've been working on this for so long, Ricky, and I feel like I should be more aware of these types of situations. They come out of left field. They always come out of left field. And I'm like, how can I become, you know, more aware each and every moment? And as I was listening to Sophie talk, then it kind of hit me a little bit. I'm like, you know, I need to live more in the now and be more immersed into each moment, right? That I'm living. So just hold off. I'm gonna give you a couple more examples. And so then I felt so bad, and I thought about this for the next, you know, couple of hours. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, you're and I guess this is where, like Sophie, and it's funny that she went right before me, where I need to have more compassion for myself, right? But I get really, really hard on myself. And I'm like, dude, you've been going through this for so long, and you still can't learn. I'm like, what are you doing? So just about a week ago, I had another one come up. My neighbor across the street, again, he was African American. He's like 78. I tell you what, if I could have anybody else be my dad instead of my dad, it'd be this guy. I mean, we really connect on from a humor perspective. He could tell he's a little hard, but then, you know, he'll bring you along. It's just an overall great guy. And we started getting in how to raise kids or do something. I forget what it was. And as we got into it more, he told me that his belief was that every African American family raised their kids the exact same way. And from my social conditioning and programming, I'm like, wait a minute, it has nothing to do with race. And then the conversation started getting a little bit heated back and forth, and I stuck to my position from that social conditioning and programming position, right? And it got to a point where we kind of looked at each other and like, man, what are we doing here? Let's just agree to disagree. But again, I'm like, I left the conversation and I was like, now why did you go to that level? Why didn't you just again say, you just had this? I thought back to the other one. I'm like, you just had this other one, but no, I'm like, I guess you're just not ready. What are you doing? So I just had that, you know, hatred. I'm not going to say hatred. I'm just like, you know, if you're going to go into these prison systems and veterans and facilitate this program, you can't let anybody get to you. You have to be able to pause and respond with the, you know, humility and just a respectfulness. And you have to be able to do it in a calm and rational way. I'm just, so you know, the universe. And this is when I called up Anthony. I said, we need a conversation. So I called up Anthony, and he's the one who pointed out, hey, it's probably because you're getting ready to go into the prison system. I said, that's a great point. We kind of talked through it. We didn't talk through everything what I stated in the chat here. But Ricky, you know, the universe being the universe, it said, I'm not done with you yet, my friend. So my dad turned 80 this past weekend, and that man is stuck in that, and that slivers like this, right? And a belief system, or he has, there's nothing, right? Zero. Everything is exactly how he sees it. And no matter what I say, he likes to come up with the opposite anyway. You know, these people, right? Just to ping me even further. So I was kind of all on edge all weekend. I will go off track here and say that one of the times I wasn't on edge a little bit with him was that we smoked cannabis together for his 80th birthday. It was very relaxful, right? My wife was giggling and laughing too. But anyway, this is a side story. But we were driving home, and I tell you what, the weekend was fantastic, right? We got into our little chirps here and there, but when we were driving home, I said, maybe it's another time for me to talk about belief systems and things like this, so he can kind of see who I am as a person, because I don't think he really gets me. And I tried to get into it, And he's like, no, mm-mm. I'm like, Dad, thoughts become things. You create everything in your life. He's like, then why don't you create a big pile of money? I said, you know what? That's fantastic. I said, you're helping me to create a big pile of money. I said, this is going to be great, right? I said, because when that wealth or abundance comes, I'm going to share it with you. And then he started laughing. He was like, yeah, he's like, I'll be waiting for that, right? So I said, man, this is the best thing ever. I never knew you were going to be helping me do that. So these were just 3 different examples recently that have popped up. One example got triggered, another example got triggered. Then the universe is like, I'm gonna put your dad with you the whole weekend. I really got to get you going now. So during that span, though, Ricky, I did become more aware of the triggering, but sometimes it still gets me. Now, I don't know if I'm more upset about the actual triggering or about how I feel that I've been working on myself for so long. And I think Sophie went before me at the perfect time. Like, and you already said about, what are you living in? What are you, perfect? You're walking around like Jesus? Are you enlightened? No, far from it. Way far from it. Right? And I know as long as you're on this planet, you're going to have a belief system. And as long as that belief system is coming up against 7.5 other billion belief system, there's going to be issues to be resolved. There's going to be triggers and things like that. But I pray, and my miracle is exactly what I wrote, to become more aware of them and just be able to, I want to be respected for my humility, for my openness to other people's worldview and belief system, because I need to practice what I preach, right? And that's where I'm at today.
Yeah. So I just want to point out, first of all, it's interesting how people have the idea that Jesus was never triggered, because there's more than one story in the New Testament of Jesus being triggered. Like the time he flipped over the tables in front of the temple and was chasing the merchants with a whip. So, sounds pretty triggered to me. Not to say it's not, divine sacred anger, because it very well could be. But the idea that he was never triggered, I think, is interesting, because it didn't really say that anywhere, but that's kind of what we've been led to believe. And, when I set an intention to be consciously aware of my triggers, what do you think comes next? Like when that woman said that thing, were you aware of your trigger in that moment?
No.
No, you were actually.
Well, I mean,
because it happened it happened right in front of you.
So the other, when she said it was the white privilege, right? Because I'd worked with African Americans a ton. Yeah. But so a couple things when she said that, I immediately wanted to defend myself.
Yeah.
From all the work I've done with kids and in the community, and I don't care what their color is, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if so yes, I wanted to defend myself. So, but I wasn't aware enough to do it in a better way.
Okay, so that's where I want to pause you. So there's a thing about doing this work. There's a reason why courage comes before humility and on the path that I teach. Okay. And why compassion comes before humility and why wisdom comes before humility. Because humility is kind of the last thing. Humility is sort of the thing that we have right before unconditional love, because it's like we become consciously aware of our triggers when they're no longer unconscious. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we get triggered and then we figure out where the trigger's coming from.
In that split second?
Well, maybe you got to get triggered in order to become conscious of it. Sometimes we have to get triggered to become conscious of the trigger. That's the part that most people don't want to accept. So go, wait a minute, can I get to a point where I'm no longer triggered anymore? Yes, on the other side of being triggered. Right? So I can't get to the bottom of a trigger usually until I've been triggered. Then I can get to the bottom of it. Like I could take you on a journey today to help you figure out why white privilege triggers you and why, because I know your stories that you shared with me, and you know some of my story too. And I don't know about you, man, but I didn't feel like I had white privilege as a kid, but I did, but I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't feel privileged when I was living in an all black neighborhood. Let me tell you, there was plenty of black privilege, and I didn't feel like I was, there was white privilege for me because I was the only white kid in my building besides my little brother. And it didn't feel like a privilege to be white in that neighborhood. But that's a micro issue on in a macro conversation. So we could get to the depth of why do you actually feel like you got triggered by that.
I know why I got triggered. I mean, it's because I understand. I know I have white privilege, and I understand that concept. I'm not one that doesn't go up against it. And then I've taken my time to work with plenty of African American kids, right? So I felt I know where that comes from. So I don't think, but I need to formulate. And I didn't cuss or swear at her. I just raised my voice and said, "What are you talking about?" Right? But that was enough for me that I don't want to do it again. Right? Because guess now. So this is the part I didn't talk about. You see this all the time. I could have been a victim of the social media, because if somebody would have broke a camera out at that exact second, they could have said, she could have said something about white privilege, and you could have seen me yelling and screaming, and it could have been like an 8-second clip, and then there you go. And that's how those things work, right? So for me, it was more, I know where it's coming from, but it's the responding in a calm, choosing the right words in a calm manner and choosing the right words for the situation, albeit she was going on and on and on, but that's where I'm at with the triggers.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, if I pray to be aware of my triggers, what I'm going to potentially get is more triggering situations, right?
Yeah.
If I pray to be able to not get triggered anymore, what I might get is more triggering situations, because a trigger is telling me that there are emotions that are unprocessed. So really the secret to not being triggered is to process the emotions. But the paradox is sometimes I can't process the emotions until I'm triggered.
That makes sense. That's probably why they sent my dad this past weekend.
Exactly. It's the paradox. So that's why when I was talking to Sophie, and Sophie's a martial artist, so she gets this. As a martial artist, it's like, I don't really get to respond. Like, I can practice a technique a million times, but when I get punched in the mouth, suddenly things change. And how I respond to that technique needs to be automatic, and it needs to be habitual. So for me, meditation is a really great way to help me slow down in responding to triggers so quickly. Meditating once or twice a day allows me to slow down my impulses. So then when I have a thought while I'm meditating, I can respond to that thought with more breathing. When my mind tries to take me on a journey, I can respond to that thought with more breathing. So meditation is a great way for me to practice not responding to my impulses. Avoiding stimulants like coffee and things like that are another way for me to slow down my impulses. So there's lots of ways why we get impulsive. And that's what happens when we respond to a trigger. We're responding to an impulse. So slowing down our impulsivity by meditating and doing other practices like that, that's one way to do it. But really, to be consciously aware of every single trigger requires a lot of being triggered. So really, the only secret is the humility and the compassion to say, you know what, I got triggered. Now you're doing it now by sharing it with all of us, and you did it when you shared it with Anthony. And maybe if the circumstances were different, you could have even shared it in that moment and been like, you know what, when you said that, it triggered me, because I feel really passionate about working with African Americans, and I felt hurt by that situation.
Well, hold on, I just thought of something. So you're right, it's bad. But I'm not the person I used to be when I was young. That's the real trigger.
Right.
That's what it is. I used to be, I'm not saying I was a person of white privilege when I was, however, but I was a person that caused problems. I was a person that didn't care about anything. That's just the phase I was in, right?
Yeah.
So just get out of my way, and I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to say what I want. But now I consider myself to be, you know, for the most part, a compassionate, loving, caring individual. And if you're going to say something that's going to go against that, then that goes the whole way back to where I'm like, wait, I'm not how I used to be. And I think that's the trigger right there.
Yeah, good catch. So is there an opportunity for forgiveness here for who you used to be? Is that really
There
what you
still
brought up?
is. And that's another thing I wanted. So I do find myself, and it's through my triggers, where I think that I've, forgiven myself for, A through Z, but then I'm like, wait a minute, S and R have been coming, something's going, so I haven't fully forgiven myself for those aspects of who I used to be, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm still living and I want to work on those more. That's how it comes up, right?
Yeah.
So that, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Gandhi or Thich Nhat, I forget how to say his name, but one of them said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family.
Well, yeah, a la daddy.
Yeah. So you get it. So I mean, the goal isn't to no longer be triggered. Now people think that that's the goal of enlightenment, to no longer be triggered. No, I don't think that's the goal. I think that's a byproduct of enlightenment eventually, maybe if we get lucky. I think the goal of enlightenment is forgiveness in the moment. If I can forgive myself instantly, as soon as I get triggered, if I can forgive myself and have compassion for myself instantly, then I'm enlightened. See, there's enlightenment and there's liberation, and they're not the same thing. Enlightenment is recognizing that you are the creator of your experiences. Everything comes from you and all of your triggers are happening inside of you. That's enlightenment. So most of you on this call, if not all of you, are enlightened based on that definition. But liberation, on the other hand, is no longer having any emotional pain that needs to be liberated. It's no more ancestral karma. It's no more old triggers. Liberation is the other side of the game. Like Sophie gets her black belt, but that just shows everyone that she knows the basics. Then there are multiple degrees of black belt after that, where you're just like becoming a better beginner over and over and over and over again. Enlightenment is your black belt. Liberation is like your 10th degree black belt, which for most martial artists doesn't come until after you're dead. In karate, you don't get your 10th degree black belt until you're dead. So and that signifies that it's a never ending journey. So liberation then really comes at the end of the game. Enlightenment is really just the beginning. I am all there is. Liberation is when I'm liberated from suffering. And that can happen in the moment if I can forgive myself instantly. I can liberate, like when you got triggered by that woman and you started to feel guilt and shame for it, if you were able to instantly say, that's interesting. All right, well, thanks, lady. Appreciate that. Now I found it. Now I'm going to go liberate it. All right, good. That's it. That's liberation. So when we can reach that state instantly in the moment, when we recognize that there is no her, she wasn't even there, she doesn't exist, she's a figment of your imagination, and that the only thing that was real in that moment was your experience of your own liberation happening, of a trigger you're becoming conscious of. And so the secret to becoming consciously aware of all of our triggers is two things that we can do that I know of. One is get triggered endlessly, and the other is extraordinarily deep introspection, which can happen through like what Thomas is about to do, a 3-day silent retreat. It can happen with ayahuasca. It can happen with meditating in a cave. It can happen with therapy or coaching. It can happen lots of ways. But then the other way, the more like organic way, is just to get triggered. And then we know that there's a trigger. Once we get triggered, we know the trigger's there, then we find it, we heal it, and then we move on from it. It doesn't sound like you fully healed the trigger yet, which is maybe why it came up, to show you that it's still there, because our triggers are a great indication of what we need to heal next. So when I get triggered, it's like, oh, damn it. Like I got triggered by Julia the other day. Now I'm working with my coach on Friday about it, what I got triggered by, because I thought I healed it. Apparently I didn't. So these triggers are a good indication that there's still more work to do. But the the point of the work is to be able to process the triggers when they happen, which you did. You knew that the trigger happened. You walked away from it. You were able to pause. You were able to reflect. You were able to figure out why. So from my perspective, that's a success. Now, it'll be interesting to see when it happens again, because when the trigger is healed and someone accuses you of white privilege again, if it happens, you might be like, aha, there it is again, but not this time. You know, I got this time. So sometimes we need to get punched to see where our arms are down. You know, oh, my guard was down there. Now I know. Now my hands are a little higher this time. I'm not going to get caught by the same technique again. Likewise, if we get triggered, it's like, it feels vulnerable to get triggered, right? It does. It's just like when you get punched in the belly, it's like, oh, it feels very vulnerable. I don't like that feeling, but it helps me understand that I wasn't protecting myself. And it helps me understand that my triggers aren't healed. So it's kind of necessary. That vulnerability is kind of necessary. And when we're stepping into a role of leadership, like what you're doing, I think Anthony was bang on with that. When you're stepping into a role of leadership, then the universe is like, all right, cool. I'm going to send you challenges at that level now. You were getting challenges at Tony, you know, the programmer sales guy. Now you're getting challenges at Tony, the guy that's going to work in jails. And those challenges are at a different level. So you haven't really healed those triggers yet because you haven't had challenges at that level yet. If that makes sense. I mean, if you decided, oh, I'm going to go on the path of being a shaman. All right, dude, let me know how that goes, because things change.
Now that's easy. That's a great point, Ricky. And I think Tony might even, and I think Andy might even mention something like it's, you know, when I'm in my own environment, come on, triggers, bing, 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 right? But when you want to take it to another level and there's so much commotion going on and you're not as aware as you typically are, and it comes at you, that's when it can get you, right? That's when you know, wow, I thought, you know, I was totally healed. But I love what you said about forgiving myself immediately, because I have been working hard and I do care and I'm going to become the best version of myself, but I can't do that unless I go through that hierarchy. It's just, you can't go from here to here.
No,
So
yeah.
it's just about forgiveness and compassion in the moment. And I think that will bring each time more clarity as I go along. Yeah,
and like you said, it creates an opportunity for humility. I got triggered the other day here at the place I'm living at, because one of the new guys didn't put the dishes away in the right place, and I didn't say not in the right place, in the place where they have been put away, and I didn't say anything to him yet, but I mentioned it to Julia on the phone when I was trying to find the thing. And then this morning, I haven't talked to him yet. I'm going to talk to him today. He said, oh, did you find the strainer? So he heard me complaining about him, but I didn't say anything to him. So it's like, now like I could have just said something to him, and then it would be, you know, he'd feel a little vulnerable in the moment, but then it would have been over. But I didn't, because I was feeling too vulnerable about the idea of saying something to him. So I complained about him behind his back instead. And now I feel even more vulnerable than I would have if I had just said something in the first place.
You're making me feel better, Ricky.
Well, it's just this we're human beings, right? And we get triggered by things.
Oh man.
But the reason I got triggered by it is because he was reminding me of some of my own patterns.
Yeah.
Of not putting things away, not doing it, you know, not doing this, not doing that. I forgot toilet paper in my toilet a few times. You know how Costa Rica works. You're not supposed to flush toilet paper.
Yeah.
My toilet got clogged. Then I'm like, oh, great. Am I going to have to tell the woman that I've been putting toilet paper down the toilet? I'm going to be so embarrassed. And, you know, it's just these little things. And the answer is humility is always really the medicine. And compassion requires humility, because we have to sort of say, well, I got triggered. And you know, I'm not ashamed of myself. I'm not proud of myself. It is what it is. I got triggered, and people get triggered. It happens. And now I'm aware of the trigger. So I'm going to figure out the root of it, but I take responsibility for it. Like I said to you before, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it's not your fault, It's not her fault that she got triggered, the woman at the casino. It's not your fault that you got triggered, but it is your responsibility if you want to live a happy, peaceful, loving life. If you don't care about that, then you're going to keep getting triggered. You're not going to care. But again, I just want to be clear that when I pray for faith, God doesn't like inject faith into me. God creates opportunities for me to have faith. So if I want to be aware of my triggers, it's possible that just suddenly I'll see them all. They'll be like, oh, there they are, they're there. Or I might experience them in real time.
I put myself in a corner today, didn't I, my friend? Triggers are going to come left and right now.
Well, it's just,
boy, it's going to be a heck of a week.
Well, yeah, lots of meditation, right? Lots of meditation. For me, it's like meditation, easy on the coffee, easy on the impulsive behaviors. So if I'm someone that goes to the kitchen, has to have a cookie when I go there because that's my impulse, then I'm going to be more likely to get triggered. If I go to the store and I can't not buy chocolates, well, I'm going to be someone that might get triggered then. So it's like really becoming aware of my impulsive behavior is how I'm going to stop myself from responding to my triggers. It's not the trigger that's the issue. It's the reaction to the trigger. Yeah. It's different if you respond to a trigger, because when we get triggered, we check in and then we choose our response. But it's when I react to a trigger. And that's because the time between trigger and reaction is really small. Just like if you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is go get coffee, you're more likely to be someone that's going to get triggered. Whereas if you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is meditate and drink some water and take your time, you're going to be less likely to get triggered. So it's really about learning how to become more responsive than reactive and making that a practice. And being triggered is the real world on the job training for becoming a master at responding to triggers. It's like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And then things change.
All right, man, I think I'm good.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, my pleasure. We've still got about 15 minutes. Would anyone else like to jump on? No pressure, of course. Yeah, sure. Silence is magic, isn't it?
Get your hand to levitate.
Yeah, exactly. So let me just find your intention again. So it's to connect with unceasing courage, and then you upgraded that to, with this courage, I'd have the abilities to act on my intuition, observe and speak without judgment, ask for help, and release limiting patterns and habits built by fear. So tell me a bit about how that applies in your real life, or how it's applied in your real life recently.
Yeah. So I guess just some awarenesses of kind of the last year of my life that, last summer I was kind of getting ready to launch a new project, which had a lot of components to it. And I was triggered in regard to that project and the mentor that I had, to the point of basically leaving it on the side burner. But I think that emotional impact really sparked a new awakening in myself that's kind of been going on for the last year or so. I feel I'm now kind of learning to find a balance between this awakening and spending a lot of my my mental time in dimensions other than this one, and now being able to find my balance back and utilizing my physical senses and my tangible abilities, on planet Earth to carry out some of these things. And what's come to me is I needed that. I still have the opportunity to work on these projects that I had last summer. And just last week, it came to me that getting back to that will fill a lot of the areas, the main areas where what I really enjoy doing. and what fills my heart. But what had happened to like the trigger that sent me kind of spiraling away from that, which I see now definitely is a necessary thing, and was that, you know, being told, or actually someone else being told, in effect, that that I wasn't good enough. And that was really the most recent and time that I remember this happening. But then looking, you know, back, I could see where there were a number of those instances as a child that have made like this idea of courage like an ideal that is separate from me in my view. But I'm really now, as I'm moving forward with this, you know, how do these things play out in real life? You know, that, you know, I think that would have, you know, if I do something that I fear that won't work out well for me, well, a reputation thing, much more important than that, that I think you got a big group of people who won't even pay attention to it. I got a big group of people who will support me regardless of the content or that I produce. And then you've got another group in the middle, which are, you know, have their own other opinions. But the end of the day, when what's coming out of me is just my reflection of the universal consciousness, and you know, my realizations are the work that I've put into it, and experiences that I've had, which have absolutely given me more inner peace and I believe personal freedom. Those are two phrases and things that I work with a lot, and with my intention, that I'm having people ask me now, and this has really just come about in the last week to 2 weeks, you know, so kind of as we're getting toward later points of this program, people are asking me how, like, you know, to show me, come to my house and show me. They're like, I don't know what you do. If you're going to burn sage at my house, or what you're going to tell me, you know, you're going to give me a book, or what you're going to do. And so now I am, you know, getting those things on the calendar, right, to start to practice those types of things and flex our muscle. And I, with people who I've, you know, who know me as the old person, right, the businessman, and you know, jet setter kind of person, which I've gotten all of the praise that I've received, awards I've received, compensation I've received. It's been because of ego stuff, and that doesn't excite me anymore. But I can see this courage connection coming through the opportunities to, you know, to practice these things. Ability to practice to ask for help. You know, I don't need to offer help. It's now being asked of me. So that's really exciting, and you know, really observing without judgment, right? So we hopefully don't have those hard triggers that, you know, this thing that was said about me, which triggered me, right? I wasn't even in the conversation, right? But I took it so personally that it really, you know, spun me out emotionally for a little while. But I feel it got me into whatever new awarenesses, new studies that have made me, I believe, a better version than I would have been a year ago. So as I'm unpacking this, you know, I can see where my courage level is much greater than it was last summer, But I really don't have that like as I haven't embodied it yet because I have to go out there and actually like, do the reps. And it seems like that's what's on my doorstep now, right? The ability to do the work in a new way that I've never done before, which is exciting. And yeah, the previous people who shared that were just how this all connect to what's going on in my life. Again, just more realizations that from speaking and living from the heart, that people who are seeking to do that as well, there's going to be a lot of connections, and they'll be able to learn from words that come out of my mouth if they're coming out with the proper intention, and vice versa. I mean, we're all learning from each other, which is beautiful understanding that I've come to, and which also helps, just as far as going back to what Tony was talking about, helps with my triggers, right? That if someone is saying something that's so out of left field to me, it's because I needed to hear that, because my experiences, nothing had like that wouldn't even be an option to say those words, but it's a person's perspective right next to me, right? So how do we wrap love around that? We just need to spend a number of minutes talking about that, but how it funnels into my, where I'm trying to be today. Beautiful. So yeah, thanks to everybody who shared. Got a lot out of it, and every call I do of anyone who speaks. So thank you so much. Very grateful.
I had a question come up. Can I ask it?
Please.
What does courage mean to you?
You're the first thing that popped up. I witnessed all that stuff that happened in my head there in like 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. Though first I was going to say, was almost like, for me, is because obedience and being a people pleaser is so important, a big part of my conditioning, that courage was not caring what other people think. It's the first thing that came to mind for me. But to me, I believe that. But then when I started, I said, I really don't believe that, in my heart. That was just the first reaction. But as I thought about it for a moment, it tied directly to faith for me. And I guess I haven't tied courage to faith, that I know where I come from. I know my intention. I know my connection with other living things. And I know that love, which includes compassion and forgiveness, is the most powerful vibration, and that's what creation comes from. And that's what I'm trying to do, is create and innovate. And that's what I intend to do. So again, reprogramming that subconscious part that tells me I don't have that, when my ego reacts, seems like it's something I could set out to do here.
Coach once said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. And so in order to have courage, we have to have fear. In order to have courage, we have to have situations that require courage. So courage is really is just the willingness to act when necessary. It doesn't require us to not feel fear. It doesn't require us to not feel triggered. It doesn't require us to not be afraid. That's not necessary. Fear is a very necessary and normal response to certain situations. And courage then is really the mastery of responding to fear and acting in alignment with what we believe is necessary in that moment. And so in order to have courage to speak without judgment, for example, is really the willingness to speak and to do our best to navigate the feeling of not judging. And then the courage to ask for help is just to ask for help. And the courage to change our habits that are built by fear is really to respond to that fear and to act in the way that we need to act. So courage, I associate courage with the fire element because the fire element is associated with action and will and really moving forward and focusing and determination and motivation and inertia, movement, action. Alain, who's most of you haven't met him, some of you have met him. He's my first real student of coaching and shamanism. And last night we had a conversation about some of the things that were coming up for me this week. And he said, what's the opposite of distraction? And I said, focus. And he said, yeah, that's what most people say. But the opposite of distraction is traction. It's getting things done. It's actually making progress. And so you say, what's the opposite of courage? And people say fear. And it's like, no. The opposite of courage is inaction. The opposite of courage is freezing. It's responding to the fear and doing nothing, I think. Unless, of course, the most courageous thing to do is to do nothing. Then courage is doing nothing. And that is action in itself. So it sounds like you have the courage, and really what's necessary is not for you to ask for more courage, but to practice the courage that you already have and to just continue to be aware of where you're already practicing courage in your life, where you're already living in aligned with this overall goal that you're working toward, the state of consciousness that you're working toward.
Yeah, that makes great sense to me right now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What is an action you can take away from this, Anthony? What's the action step for you?
Yeah, it's getting this appointment scheduled with my friends and their family and sharing some stories that have helped me find peace in my life, and the courage to open my heart, which they've seen before, but not in this sort of way. So it's a vulnerable, it'll be vulnerable for me, but I know there's growth in there. That's the only place there's growth in that regard. So the courage for me is to step forward and act on this opportunity and help some friends where they feel I can help.
Yeah.
And where they've asked for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Time to answer the call.
Amen.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
So that's the end of our call today, everyone, and the end of the program too. I'm going to send out a questionnaire to get your feedback on your experiences and what you would add or what you would take away to the program, what you would have liked to see more of or less of. And I'm gonna use it to continue to build the next version of the program, which again, you're all gonna have access to for supporting this program. Being part of the beta, the test of it is really a hybrid. Some of you have been in some of my group coaching programs before, so this has been kind of a hybrid of that, and then also having the material. So I really appreciate you being part of this and coming on this journey and being part of this pilgrimage. And that's really what it is. The last ritual is your self-initiation. So if you haven't done that already, that's the next step for you in this part of the pilgrimage. The pilgrimage isn't finished until you complete that self-initiation. If you doesn't feel aligned to do it, of course, there's no pressure, but that is the final step. So let's unmute ourselves. We can all say goodnight, and we'll stay in touch. We're going to stay in the group. And by the way, that group is going to stay open. You can stay in it. When other people come to the pilgrimage, they're going to join that group. You can stay in the group for life. Gives you lifetime access for being part of this program. So you'll see new people coming in and sharing their stuff and all of that, and you can connect with them as well. So thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for participating, and I will see you all very soon.
See you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, Ricky.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good meeting, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.